Hey everyone, I am here to talk to you about partial interval recording today. This is a form of measurement that if the target behavior occurs at any time during the interval, it is marked as having occurred for the entire interval. This does not mean that it's occurred for the duration of that interval, just that it has occurred at some point within that time period. The frequency data is not taken, nor is duration. You simply just mark down if the behavior has occurred. So let's say while you're recording the data and it's a minute-long interval, for example, you would mark off that the behavior occurred even if it was within like that first 10 seconds and it didn't happen again. And then you wait for the next interval to start before you record more data as to whether or not the behavior occurred during that next interval. At the end of recording all of the intervals, you will calculate this as a percentage. So reasons to use partial interval data. It's used to represent the proportion of the entire observation period in which the target behavior occurred. So this one can be used, it should be noted that it may overestimate the proportion of the observation period. So this is helpful when you're targeting behavior reduction strategies. And this is also a valid recording method to use to collect data on multiple behaviors or for multiple participants. So if you have more than one target behavior you want to track, or you have a couple of different participants, this is a really good one to use because you're able to dedicate a little bit more time to tracking the different behaviors, because once it's occurred, you don't have to continue to watch for it within that interval for that specific behavior anymore. It's kind of a one and done thing. You mark it and you move on to the next thing, or you wait for the next interval to begin. So collecting data, you want to define it and determine the target behavior before you start. You also want to determine the duration of each interval. And then you're going to want to create a table to record that data in. It's going to make your life a heck of a lot easier. And then you're going to observe the behavior and mark an X in each interval that the behavior occurred and a 0 for each interval that the behavior is absent or it did not occur. So down here on the bottom, I have a little 5-second interval chart example here. And then we're going to use that here in the next slide once we get to that example. Next is the calculating data and how to do that. So once the observation period has ended, you're going to count up the number of the intervals that the target behavior occurred. And then you're going to divide that number by the total number of occurrences. You're going to divide the number of occurrences by the total number of intervals. And then you're going to multiply that by 100 to get the percentage. And so there's a little equation here on the bottom for those of you who tend to understand a little bit better with a visual, which I know I do. And so we're going to do an example here. And I just marked off the X's and zeros on mine to begin with. So hopefully that doesn't alter what you end up recording, but just to give you kind of a guide on how to go about this. So I'm going to play the video. In it, I am counting off the different intervals, so you don't have to track the time for this example. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Stop recording. Okay, so there you go. You should have gotten a total of 7 intervals where the behavior occurred. One of the intervals, it was a pretty minimal sound, so if you missed out on that, then that's understandable. And then there's a total of 8 intervals, so you will take the 7 and you'll divide it by 8 and then multiply it by 100 to get a total of 87.5%. So after using that example and seeing how it's done, I am going to set you free on your own independent practice. This video is a little bit longer, It's a 3-minute video and use 10-second intervals to record the data. Complete the steps previously described, so you should have an idea of how to go about doing this. I'm not going to count out the intervals this time, so go ahead and maybe set up a stopwatch or a timer so you can see when the different intervals switch over. And then I did give you a description of the target behavior, which is whining. So any high-pitched sound that's emitted for any duration of the time where the dog's mouth is closed. So go ahead and take a stab at it, and good luck. All right, so that wraps up the video. Good luck, and thanks for listening.